Okay. So welcome to the community advisors discussions. For those of you who are new, the community advisors are responsible in the Catalyst program for doing high quality assessments of the proposals. And those assessments are published for the voters to give them guidance on their voting. So it's a critical part of the process. And it's challenging. There's a lot of challenging issues as we've grown as a program. I am the outgoing Catalyst Circle member who is representing the community. And we're going to welcome today Nadia, who's the incoming Circle member. But before we do that, I want to talk. I really actually just want to ask you all a question about the Fund 8 improvements. Then we'll introduce Nadia and give her a chance to talk with the community. And finally, I wanted to work with Nadia to raise the question of whether we should have a subcircle that supports Nadia in her role. And if so, how should we go about selecting that group? So on this first issue, if you recall last month, myself, Nadia, and excuse me, there was one other person, his name's not coming to me right now, but another member of the circle joined the Merrick, who's here today, and appreciate that, and the other members and some other members of the IOG team to talk about kind of what changes could be done in Fund 8 and what changes were sort of recognized as important, but we're going to take longer to implement. Now, TiVo went over that in detail in a meeting later that week. I was planning to do it also in an after town hall discussion 2 weeks ago, but given the election cycle, I was asked to wait. I'm not planning today to go over that whole process. I think it's been, there are other avenues that you can get that information if you're interested. But there is one question on my mind that I wanted to get some feedback on, and that is the following. If I look to the future of the role of the community advisors, my biggest concern is that the structure of the incentives right now is creating some problems with the integrity of our work. And this has been talked about, but let me kind of explain how I see the concern, and then I wanted to get feedback from the group. If your responsibility is to make an assessment and you're trying to get an accurate assessment, you're trying to write an excellent summary of your ranking of the proposals or your rating of the proposal, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. But you face two difficult challenges. One is that if you give a low rating of 1 or 2, then there's a very high likelihood that the proposer is going to flag that. And from the stats I've seen, there's about a 50% chance that that's going to end up getting thrown out and you won't get compensated for that review. On the other hand, if you write a review with a 4 or especially a 5 ranking, and that proposal ends up getting funded, then you get a bonus. So this sets up a situation in which you are being paid and incentivized to write flattering reviews in the hopes that the proposals that you review will get funded and you'll get paid. You're going to get paid more. I think that hurts the integrity of the program, and I think it's urgent. But in the meeting with IOG, they push back on that, and they're not planning to change it for this round. They're willing to look at it in the future, but it's not a priority for this round. And my question, it's getting a little late now. But I still have concerns enough about it that I wanted to hear more from the community. And if others agree with me, I was going to recommend that a letter be put together, uh, to communicate the concerns more clearly to the, to the Catalyst program. So I've kind of got, that was a little bit long-winded, but you understand, I think that gives you a sense of what my concern is. And if you want to give some feedback on that and your own perspective about this particular issue, why don't you raise your hand, and I'd like to hear from people. And I'm trying to get a sense of, how others feel about this issue and how much urgency people have about the issue. Any takers on feedback? Lee, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that also concerned me because you're incentivizing people to come in and give reviews based on financial gain. So you're going to have a situation arise as more people become aware of that are going to go in there and flood the system just trying to get some ADA for putting out reviews. So then, that's going to create more work for the veteran advisors to have to come in and weed through it and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. And we did experience that. I'm going to call that a little bit separate problem in the sense that there was a bot attack and other areas where not high quality reviews were being copied. That has been prioritized, and there will be new processes in place for Fund 8. I'm not going to try to go over the details of that right now because it's been done in other areas. But I appreciate you're absolutely right, Lee. I don't think we have a perfect solution yet, but that there will be changes in Fund 8 to help address that. Tom, can you go ahead? Tom Frey? You're still on mute, Tom, but you're welcome to go ahead once you've unmuted. I'm going to have Nick go first. Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, Kenric. Yeah, thanks. It's a really interesting problem that you've raised, and the way that I'm not as experienced in this community as you are, but the way that you've outlined the problem, I think it's perfectly clear that as the community grows, that it will compound and become worse. Do you have any idea as to how negative compensation could work? So not that you would not necessarily a method of punishing people who allocate too many high value scores, but compensating people for correct reviews that are scoring lower, in the same way that they're being awarded bonuses for high scores to successful projects. Is there a mechanism that you have in mind for the equivalent for low scores?
Well, so that raises some interesting questions. So longer term, there have been proposals or suggestions made that you could ask community advisors to put a deposit down that might be at risk if it's determined that they were sort of willfully trying to manipulate the system. I don't think, now I will say, I don't think that's that at this stage is not a very serious proposal. We're not there's no plans to implement something like that in the short term. And I think we'd have to have pretty high integrity. We'd have to improve the integrity of the veterans CA process quite a bit too, before we could have confidence that we could, make that kind of a determination. Now, I don't know. The problem with people giving, one or twos as a ranking and then having their assessment filtered out. That's a tougher problem. And I think there we're aware of the potential issue, but we don't have good solutions yet. So I'm not suggesting that there needs to be changes in Fund 8 on that. But my question is more, and maybe this is a question for Merrick too. I'd like to understand Merrick a little bit better. Like, would it, in terms of the actual coding, would it be possible to just put a pause on this bonus as it's currently coded? And in the meantime, there's some work done on designing a better bonus system. Like, I'm not opposed to bonuses either. I'm opposed to bonuses that are not aligning the integrity of the program and giving even if it's just a perception that people would be writing flattering reviews in order to get paid more, that hurts the integrity of the program. So maybe Merrick, if you could explain what's feasible in Fund 8. And I know, in a sense, and in fairness, this is also part of why I want to ask Merrick about it, is I know that it's getting late in the process now. And I know that there was kind of a position made a couple of weeks ago about what was feasible, and this wasn't on the list. So this is why I'm raising the question now. So Merrick, can you tell us a little bit about the coding of that bonus and whether it's feasible to put a pause on it?
So regarding bonus itself, we are too late to make any changes because we have governance parameters signed off, and we have, lottery with a bonus signed by everyone. So this is the formula we'll follow. But I'm sorry, could you please elaborate a little bit more on CA works? Because what I'm hearing is that you're assuming every single assessment with score 1 or 2 will be filtered out, while I'm assuming that it can be scored by VCA as an excellent one or good one, because good or excellent review has to provide some value for the proposer and lead him to make his proposal better. But the score should reflect the current state of the proposal itself. So it doesn't mean that, if the CA is doing his work properly, he will give scores from 1 to 5, and he can get excellent review for each of the score he left, correct? Because assuming that CAs and VCAs, they're doing their job as good as they can. But you're presenting this in a way where CA will start writing flattering reviews, but you should know by now that flattering reviews usually are being filtered out, because in the flattering reviews there is no content. There is only an idea that, hey, this proposal is genius, it will bring so many value to the Cardano ecosystem, but there are no details. There is no I don't know how to say it. There is no meat in the assessment.
Thank you, Merrick. And I won't spend too much time on this then, given what you've just communicated about, it really being past the time where we could make any changes for Fund 8. And I respect that. But let me just clarify my concern, and then maybe it can get deferred to a later discussion. I hear and agree with what you're saying. Like, if someone only writes just a flattering review and they haven't taken the time to really explain the content of the proposal and why it's either good or bad, that's likely to be, get a bad veterans CA assessment and possibly removed. So I agree with that. My concern is both on the actuality of what's happening and on the perception of what's happening. So if I work backwards, there's a perception in the proposal community that the way the structure of the incentives are, that there's this potential for the assessments to not be accurate because you're likely to get more pay the higher you rank a proposal. So you're kind of incentivized the way the bonus is structured. There was a need, and Tavo actually explained this part to me, and I sort of respected his suggestion that the larger the proposal, it's maybe appropriate to get more compensation because larger proposals tend to be longer in their content and harder to assess. So that I can kind of see that alignment. But the question is whether a proposal is successful or not successful in getting funding really has nothing to do with the accuracy of your assessment. And basing the bonus on whether or not the proposal was funded or not really skews the incentives of the assessors. And it's just the case that you are going to get paid more for concentrating on or writing good proposals or good assessments. Why don't you go ahead, Merrick, with a follow-up, and then at that point, I'll transition the meeting to introducing Nadia. Go ahead, Merrick.
Thank you. One note, one remark regarding the bonus itself. The bonus is given not for the funded proposals. It's given for reviewing approved proposals. And approved proposal is the proposal which total stake for votes yes and no was bigger than 1% of total stake in fund. And also yes votes, there should be 15% yes votes than no votes. So if you open the voting results, you will see that we have green one funded, yellow one approved but over budget, and the red ones not approved. So the bonus is given for all the approved, funded, and over budget assessments.
Okay. Yeah, that is a larger group of proposals, certainly much larger. In fact.
Much larger, correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll leave that discussion there. And there's all the, that is perhaps a narrow issue, but I feel it's a critical issue. So, I think as a team, we should include that in our work going forward to relook at that. But it's fine. There's a lot of other areas that we need to work on too. All right, so that wraps up my role as the Circle rep. And I really appreciate the support the community provided over the last 3 months. It was a great experience. And I encourage everyone to get more involved in the leadership of the Catalyst. I already started writing my essay for, being a delegated representative. And as Dor explained, I think a couple of weeks ago, anyone that's kind of currently participating in the Catalyst program and coming to town halls, part of the experience of being early is to get the experience to be a good delegated representative. So I think if you're here today, you're participating, that may be worth applying for, and I would encourage you to do that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over and introduce Nadia Hopkins. For those of you who attended on Saturday, we had 3 great candidates. It was a very close race with Philip and Nadia originally tied, and then in the second vote, Nadia did win. And I'm thrilled to have. I would have been happy with the other candidate. The other candidates were great, and but I am thrilled to have Nadia joining the circle. I did nominate her, and part of why I did is she had really stepped up early in my experience of being a circle member to support and help with the coordination of the team. And a little later, we'll talk about, what kind of approaches we could take to have a sub-circle. But in some level, sort of informally, Tivo was also on the circle with me, and just his tools with the Miro boards are fantastic. And he was participating in the CA process and in our meetings. So that was great support. And then Nadia stepped up and made some great notes and summaries of some of our meetings, and then attended some of the meetings with IOG with me. So, and I found out in that process that Nadia and I are quote unquote neighbors. Because in this global world, I live in Boston and she lives in Philadelphia. And as far as the Catalyst program goes, that makes us neighbors.
One less step of doing math when you have to get together.
Yeah, right. And she has a lot of experience as an entrepreneur herself. I'll let her describe that a little bit more. So welcome, Nadia.
Thanks, Kenric. Thanks to all of you for being here. I don't think I'm hopefully not too new to everyone, meaning I'm not new to you, but maybe we haven't had direct dialogue. So I'm just going to be brief here because I really, my sentiments in, thinking about this role are really that I would be an earpiece for this group and try to do the work of facilitating conversations where that's helpful, and to also put a little infrastructure underneath us being able to communicate with each other. I see that's a gap that's a little bit in need of some help here in this group, but mostly my goals here are going to be threefold as far as things specific to the role. And if you're in the nominations, you heard me say these. One is, I think, a very important initial thing is to create a communication process that is everything from someone has an initial question that maybe is a one-off to groups that want to come together and solve problems. The sub-circle is something we've been talking about for a bit, that there would be a mechanism for people to come together and to for a flow of that to happen over time, so that things don't get discussed and then not taken forward. So a communication system. I really welcome input right now. I've just been having communications with people who have done that, who I've just met over the time here, and just asking them how they do it, other previous circle members. So it's important that that is a very open system, that people can easily find the way to look into what we're doing, and that we can sort of actively present what we're doing so that people could hop in and get a sense of it. So it's our responsibility to represent a lot of CAs, and there's new ones of those coming every day to the channels that we have, and it's helpful for them to not get lost in the fast moving and often complex dialogue that's there, which is very positive and also sometimes hard to get a sense of where things are. So I'm going to work on that. Right now, I'm thinking it's going to be some combination of just like a visual that people can get a sense of the projects that are happening, and probably some like GitHub in the mix there. And of course, we always have working Google Docs and things. So I'm really a process person, and that's an exciting project. And if any of you are actively doing something that you feel really works, I would like to be able to build a model for maybe others to use. I think that would be a very helpful thing, because this is not a problem specific to us, but we certainly have a lot of things that we need to address in this group in a short time. Second thing is encouraging broader participation. So that's new people, that's far away people, that's close by people who don't necessarily share the same opinion. So a really diversifying of the people who are in this group, especially people on the spectrum of being a CA who maybe don't have the same experience with Catalyst overall. I think there's a lot of help that we can give there, and that we can be proactive about developing both the outreach for that, and then the stewarding of it by how we communicate within this group and how we move things forward. I think the model for communication could also really help that. And then a little bit of a decision-making process, although I think that naturally happens a bit. So we just need to be able to sort of decide, think about how we can come to collective consensus on the things that we can make decisions about. And most specifically, I think it was JP, I'm sorry if it was someone else who posted the list of things that, no, Naveed, sorry, posted the things that are IOG and this community collaborative stuff that we can actually focus on, that we can come forward on those. So that's maybe just the internal stuff. I've said a lot there, but that's pretty much all that I want to say. I'm going to be very much open door and try to help in any way that is moving things forward, and also to try to make as much complexity of opinions in our discussions so that we're really getting the best, maybe not always the most streamlined, but the best collective of inputs as we solve these complex things. So that's where it's at. I'm in the Telegram channel a lot. So Telegram, mostly I'm observing, and chiming in here and there. So that's a good place if you want to connect with me one-on-one. I do think maybe I'll take the temperature here on whether or not we should get together again next week and just keep the momentum going. I think it's an important thing with Fund 8 coming. So I defer to your input there, and also would love to just make some space for people to chime in on things that they think are urgent or important, or both.
Do you want to do a show of hands right now about having, well, okay, actually, maybe a couple of process questions then come up right away. So one that you've raised immediately is, how often do you want to meet in an after town hall meeting? I felt for myself that every other week was sort of the pace that worked for me. But Nadia, you may feel differently. And so maybe first, I guess I'm wondering, Nadia, what your expectation is about how often you're going to hold after town hall meetings.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about the subcircle. The subcircle docs that are being created have a lot of community input as far as the rhythm and structure for how we might do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not someone who really loves to, I think it's important to hold the space for us to talk. And I think especially for new CAs, and especially in the particular weeks that are coming up here for Fund 8, I think it's really important that that we're on the map for people.
Yeah.
But I also think that some of these more difficult problems might be really served by that subcircle model, and that could be maybe a next thing to be. I don't see it necessary. So if anyone on here wants to chime in on that, I think what's in the subcircle documents, as I understand it, when it was first put out, it seemed to me more like a subcommittee, but I think that's not really the setup of that model. It has more of a less hierarchical setup to it. So that would be my preference, because I also think that this role is not a hierarchical role. This is a sensing role. So it's not for me to dictate that. I think that the community should dictate that, and I should help the community understand that it's dictating that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. So
It's
that leads to a second question for both Nadia and the community, is what's the process? And then what are the responsibilities for the subcircle? And maybe if we look at the selection process first, there's kind of maybe there's three basic models, that you could choose from. One would be a voting model, and there's certainly good merits to that. A second model would be an appointment model where, people sort of express their willingness to serve on the subcircle, and then Nadia makes appointments that she feels will support her in that role. And then a third could be kind of, that it's kind of open and people can volunteer to be on the subcircle. Maybe I'll wait on expressing my preference, but it'd be interesting to hear what other people think in terms of what those three options, like what's appropriate for this subcircle. How should people be selected? Anyone want to express an opinion on that? We have a quiet group today. I thought, or is it former still have influence? Well, so then Scott raises a good question. Former circle members will certainly have influence, and we stay on as alumni of the circle. However, I'm going to be pretty deferential, and for myself personally, the Catalyst program is kind of overwhelming in the scope of what's being accomplished. So while I will continue to be a CA and I will continue to support Nadia, there's other parts of the Catalyst program that I'm interested in working on as well. So that's going to take a lot of my time.
Okay, so I
go
guess
ahead,
I'll just
JP.
jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I raised my hand. So I'm just going to go back to the question that we kind of left off on, is how does the subcircle support the circle rep and how they would get a position. So my initial thought, my initial preference, I guess, would be to leave it open. Would be that people would come forward. I think that the last thing that we would want to do, even through this subcircle, would be to silence any voices or create an in-group, out-group, where some people feel like they wanted to participate, but they don't have an opportunity to participate. The thing that I'm more interested in is how does that information that happens in the subcircle get to Nadia? How does Nadia then bring that to the circle? As you know, the circle meetings are fast, busy. There's a million things to do in them. Then take whatever comes back to the community to then discuss it, right? Knowing that it would be raised, okay, either the circle, here's the circle's thoughts on it, here's how we address it. I think that's a really broad community discussion, and any sense of a subcircle that would be exclusionary might be perceived in the wrong way. Are there going to be people of the subcircle who are going to do more work, who are going to be louder, who are going to be more pushy? Of course, like we expect that. But I think where the challenge is how do we get all the problems that CAs are facing down to a manageable action plan that Nadia can bring to the circle, and then that prioritization. So I would see more of the subcircle groups as the prioritization factor of what are the key issues that this circle, knowing it's only 3 months, want to address. What are the priority issues? How could we do it? And then working with the community for those solutions. Your example, Kenric, of the rewards and the bonuses, a good example. Another thing that I would say that really needs community input is the scoring guide. It was fine for the first few funds, but through all of the reviews that we see now, people are copying. They're essentially copying does it have this? Does it have that? And it's almost a checklist.
Right.
So for me as a VCA and a CA, I'll edit those out. If you just tell me, if you just list what it has in there, it's a filtered out. So we need the community. My perception is we need the community to better understand how to engage with a proposal, how to really make a better assessment than just listing what is in or isn't in the proposal. And then really, like you said before, dealing with maybe a couple other priority issues. But beyond that, and the community discussions, I think it's going to be very hard in 3 months to set up those structures, those formats, to get those processes in place with really all voluntary people, other than Nadia, who gets a very modest stipend to participate in the circle. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But all that work isn't accounted for anywhere, right? So it's
right.
my suggestion, and sorry to get back to the original point, would be leave it open, have the after town halls. Maybe it's on the weeks where we don't have circle meetings to get that, have the one-off meetings, and then that is how that process starts more organically than but I'm not a part of the sub-circle discussions, so I'm gonna shut up from there.
And all of that is really helpful input. I won't add more comments to it, but I'm just interested to hear other perspectives. So if someone else can chime in and give their perspective on it, like, would you serve on a sub-circle? Are you interested in that? Or as JP is saying, we should just keep it open? What are people's thoughts?
I mean, I think you guys should keep it open, just that way more people can come in and learn. Because like my biggest issue was being overwhelmed. There was over 1,000 proposals, and then especially when you get into the technical ones, not having any knowledge of in how that works. So I didn't feel that I could even give a good assessment on it. So I think maybe just having a large class or a format where you could like kind of go over a proposal and show, people what you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Other suggestions? Thanks for joining us, Siak. Can you introduce yourself? Do you want to take your Siak has just indicated it's his first time here. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, actually, I'm from UAE now. Actually,
Great.
I know Mr. Nadim Karam. So he told me about this. So that actually I'm in Cardano since 2017 end. So actually I want to be a CA this time.
Oh, great.
So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Okay, that's super. Really appreciate you joining the call. And today's, as they announced earlier, there's going to be some tutorials coming up. And so, so that's great. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just maybe I'll just give my perspective on this, and then it's really up to Nadia, because there's not a formal process right now. But my own suggestion is kind of twofold. I like JP's suggestion and Lee's suggestion that it continue to be open. And I think the openness you get from community meetings, from the social media channels, and everyone's welcome to participate in whatever they feel is best in that format. At the same time, it's nice to have sort of some clear support and knowledge about who wants to volunteer more time. And in that case, I think of it as kind of an appointment, in the sense that Nadia kind of chooses a couple of people that are going to work closely with her on organizing these kinds of meetings. Like, for instance, if you want to have this every week, it might not be Nadia that runs it every week. Because it gets because one thing I realize is like, it's really quite overwhelming, all the things that we're trying to accomplish. And the role on the circle is designed to be 10 hours a week. But now, I think most people, including myself, end up putting more than 10 hours in, but I don't think that should be the way to structure it. I think that you should be figuring out ways to structure your time so that you can make good accomplishments in 10 hours a week. And part of that does include delegating to people that can support you in the role as well. So anyways, but that's just a suggestion, and it'll be up to Nadia in terms of how she wants to proceed. And maybe my last comment, just as a process point, Nadia, if you do want to hold a meeting next week, and I'd certainly encourage you to do that if, as a way to get started, that form needs to be filled out by Friday. And I will send the link now so I don't forget, so make sure you have it. Give me a moment here. Go ahead, Nadia.
Yeah, and everything that I outlined there, those three things are just meant to let the community be able to interact with itself more effectively, and for this role to be able to do its function best. I think those are more tools. And I have to get back on Twitter. I left Twitter and I will come back, Lee. Thank you for asking that. But I guess as just in life experience, I try to keep from adding layers as long as possible, meaning layers of, just layers here. I think that those things, if those things are put together, I think it relieves a lot of the strain and maybe the overlap that's happening for this community right now. I just think that it's part of the growth. We've grown tremendously. The problems that we were facing over the last fund were like strenuous problems. They took a lot of time for the VCAs and a lot of time for the CAs. And I think that, the comments that have been brought forward here are spot on. If we can solve some of these issues, then I think there's less and less need because I don't think it's scalable to have a subcircle if we're 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, CAs as we go. I think if we put some of these things and some of these tools in place, maybe we can start there. And then the tools themselves in the subcircle in a format where people rise to support an initiative rather than a role or a person might actually create a lot more enthusiasm and ownership than having another layer of a role. And that's just my sort of management feeling.
Yeah, I just want to highlight one thing as we're discussing, and it came this proposal that was just funded in Fund 7 about the Catalyst Circle funding mechanism, which actually will give each of the circle members a budget to then engage their community to do some of those tasks. So it's not just a voluntary, you're able to monetize and incentivize that participation. So as a rep, you're going to have this money at your disposal to share in the community. And so that's another good way, is where people come forward, they do the work, and they're incentivized for the work. And then you don't have burnout. The people who want to do it, I'm sure you'll get more and more people who are keen to participate when they know there's some money attached to it. So I just want to bring that to your awareness.
That's good to know, JP.
Yeah, that
I didn't realize
we just put it in this fund. And so we, as the admin team, because we do see that you do need support. You're totally right that the support.
It's funny. You all move so fast. As I was preparing for the meeting today, I was it was in my mind to caution people that there's no funding to support a subcircle, and I was wrong.
Yeah, well, we saw that as a problem, right? And as the admin team,
that's
we've
good.
been working voluntarily for the last little while, and so we see, if you really want to get the work done, we need to make sure you have the tools. And so, so this is another tool at your disposal.
That's
just
great.
to flag that.
Well, I think that covers everything I thought was important today. This has been a great meeting, and I really look forward to continuing to work with you all. And again, congratulations to Nadia. And I'm excited to be able to work with you on this. Anything else we should cover?
Yeah, so I'll just give, if you're on Telegram, I'm just Nadia Hopkins. So that's a good start. And I'll maybe that's a good beginning, is if you're not on Telegram, just send me a thing here. If you want to directly connect, we can do email, or we can set it up that way somehow. But we'll hit the ground running here pretty good, because we've already got a lot in motion. So
Yeah, and maybe that's one last thought too, is that it came up in Circle last week that more of the groups are using Discord.
Discord, yeah.
So, and there is a Fund 8 VCA discussion group. I requested to put parentheses around the V, so it's clear that it covers both VCA and CA. So we can use that too. And my understanding is more of the community is using Discord, although the CAs have been very active in Telegram.
So I make sure I have those links. Yeah, I feel that way about it too as well. This is one of the challenges for this group, is that we have these fantastic conversations going on, and they are flying at the speed of light in different areas. So we need to make sure that we get all the talent and all the ideas together on these problems, but also don't let that prevent us from experimenting and moving forward with trying things, and throwing stuff against the wall and making sure it works, or fixing it if it doesn't.
Very good. Great to see everyone. Thanks for joining us, Matthias. We're just wrapping up actually, but appreciate you coming. We can't hear you, Matthias.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I was late. I was held up at work. So
Yeah. All right. Well, take care, everyone.
yeah, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.